Hey guys, long time no talk. This is episode 12, 13, something of the Happy Fun Music Time. Happy Fun Music Time. I'm really off my game today. Podcast. It is a quarantine podcast where myself and Alex Alice discuss music. And today we are covering our top 10 albums each of 2020. How are you doing today, Alex?
I'm good. It's December. What a weird year it's been.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm guessing. Yeah, I'm guessing all 20 people who are going to listen to this would agree that this has been a very trying year, but it's almost done, thank God, and hopefully next year is a little more productive. Although I will say there has been some pretty good music that came out this year, and we're going to talk about several albums that qualify.
Oh, absolutely, I agree. And I just wanted to stop you because I think we've had better views than 20 on a couple of our episodes.
Yeah, when we leech off of other successful bands, we get more than 20 views.
Who's winning right now? I'm just looking at this whole first season of excellent viewing. You know what? Lost Lighthouse actually is brought the most draw with a staggering 56 views.
That's actually highly impressive. And I'm sure that those views are not because somebody was trying to find their pedal board and stumbled across our video.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. So I don't know. Why don't we have some honorable mentions, right?
When we do this, when we list our 10, the way we're going to do this is we have a timer going, and we're going to limit ourselves to 5 minutes per album, right?
Yeah. Maybe we'll keep talking until I don't know, the 4-minute mark hits. We're at like 2:18 right now, and then we'll just start.
Okay.
Yeah, and then once we hit 9 minutes, I'll just start yelling or something. I don't know.
You should play. If only there was a way when you go to edit this, put in like different sounds at every break.
Yeah, let's actually make it 5 minutes, just so we're sort of at even numbers divisible by 5.
All right, yeah, 5-minute introduction. So how much longer do we have?
We got to fill about 2 minutes 10 seconds worth of time. We have some honorable mentions we could run through. So
yeah, let's quickly. Yeah, you go first. Name some of your honorable mentions just really quickly.
Okay, Green Day, Father of All Motherfuckers, Wiz Khalifa, It's Only Weed Bro, Corey Taylor, CMFT, which is an acronym for Corey Motherfucking Taylor, and Breaking Benjamin, Aurora. All right, what about you?
You just named every single one of my honorable mentions. So
I thought they were in your top 10
segment. Oh my God! If only that was reality, this would be a very different podcast.
No, absolutely. All right, I'll give some serious top 10s right now, or not top 10s, right. Honorable mentions. Galleons released an album called Metropolis. I liked Clue by Gezan, which we'll get to later. What else? Clear Soul Forces, the band or the rap group that I talked about last year, did their final album, Forces With You. It was pretty good, didn't crack my top 10. And the Dance Gavin Dance Afterburner, which it's one of the first times they haven't released a top 10 album for me, but it was decent.
Wow. That is actually shocking.
Yeah, we're not going to be discussing them this year.
Thank God.
All right, what are your honorable mentions?
Oh, I'll list a few of them. I mean, the Deftones record "Ohms" I thought was very strong. That was an honorable mention for me. I got the new Napalm Death record was also very good. So a couple of metal records there. There was a record by a band called Clowncore, who I know we're both familiar with, called Van.
Oh, that should have been in mine too.
I need to mention that. That album's insanely fun. Fiona Apple's record, Fetch the Bolt Cutters, I thought was frankly overhyped because it's Barry Tom Waits, but I thought it was a really strong record. And then my last honorable mention is the album called Protein Threat by a band called the OCs. really fun psychedelic rock, kind of noise rock album. And I have more, but I'm guessing we're near 5 minutes. So
Yeah, we just hit the 5 minutes. Yeah, we can go back and we can name a few at the end maybe. But
yeah, sure.
yeah, we'll just get going from the top. So I guess I'll start. My number 10 album of 2020. It's gonna be Envy, The Fallen Crimson. I'm gonna go with
that's
that.
your number 10.
Yeah. You know what? I would put it a bit higher, but it was the most recent listen out of all of them, so it didn't quite have the time to gel with me as the rest of them. But
Okay.
that being said, I still really liked it. I've never listened to this band before, which I'm shocked because they were honestly right up my alley. You know, cool kind of screamo, post-hardcore, post-rock elements. This is their first album in like 8 years, I read.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? It was very consistently good across the board. I thought it was the perfect length, and it was really well produced. Yeah, it's a great album, and it was one of my favorite album covers out of these 10.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. How do you feel about it? You were the one that put me on it, so.
Yeah, this is my number 8 album, so we are already off to a similar trajectory on our list. I think this is an amazing record. This was actually the first album I heard from 2020 in full that I really loved and kind of had an inkling might appear on my top 10 of the year when December rolled around, and it did.
Oh, wow.
I think that the first 5 songs on this album are flawless. I think it's a flawless run of music. Similar to other records that have similar strong starts are Brand New's Devil and God. I think the first 5 songs on that album are flawless.
Yeah.
And then similarly to that album, it kind of falls off a little bit for me in the second half, and that's why it's not a higher album on the list, with the exception of a song like Marginalized Thread, which is really great.
That was a good song.
I think the second half is just kind of maybe repetitious or a little bit weaker than the first half, but that's not to say it's bad. I mean, the whole thing is very listenable. Like you said, it's really well produced. And I think that it's just a phenomenal hardcore kind of screamo, post-rock, however you want to describe it, record. And I second the album cover. Really nice album art on this too. Not that should matter, I guess, but hey.
Yeah. I think it does ultimately. Because it's sort of, I don't know, at least for me, like, even if I'm not looking at the album cover, when I'm listening to music, I'm sort of thinking of it. It sort of gives the music like a color and a feel, if that makes sense.
It's all, I guess, it's all part of the package. It's all part of the package.
Yeah. I'm visualizing like their artwork and sort of like their visual style when I'm listening to any band. I don't know if everyone's the same, but I think it's important.
No, that's fair. I used to look through the inserts with the albums when I would actually buy CDs, so it's definitely part of the experience. I think the song "A Faint New World" needs special shout out. That's one of the best songs of the year. The song, and my apologies, Marginalized Thread is the 5th song. I mixed up my titles. I meant to say the song Fingerprint Mark.
Oh, fair enough.
It is the one in the second half that I think is really especially strong. And then the song Rhythm is this really nice kind of not really a power ballad, but kind of a power ballad. It's the 4th song. That's another one I've had on repeat throughout the year.
Yeah.
I highly recommend, if you have not heard this album, go listen to it if you are into post-hardcore, screamo, post-rock bands like I don't know, what's a band you would say is similar to Envy? If you were a fan of this album, what other albums are similar to it?
That's tough. I want to say like kind of early Being as an Ocean, but that's like a little basic compared to this. I think this is deeper than most of their stuff. You know, had a bit of like Russian Circles, if Russian Circles sort of had like Jenny's vocals.
Yeah, I can see that actually. Kind of like Russian Circles, a little bit of Glassjaw maybe in there.
Yeah.
with a kind of like autumnal atmosphere to it. To me, it's a very fall album, and that's
Yeah.
interesting. It came out in March. Yeah, anyway, I really like this record.
Yeah. Or even like a shoegazy Circle Takes the Square. Sorry to interrupt there.
Oh yeah. Circle Take the Square.
Yeah, for this one, there's a couple of things I wanted to point out. The one thing that really grabbed me on this album was the second track, Swaying Leaves and Scattering Breath, because it sort of goes into a major key in that song after sort of a very dark opener. I don't know, it was like kind of hopeful almost, which I liked. And the spoken word parts, I didn't find them cheesy, partially because it's in a language I don't understand, and the other part would be, they're well delivered, and you can tell they're 100% committed to it. I don't know, the commitment kind of paid off for them. Favorite track on this for me would probably be the closer, if I had to pick.
Oh, really?
I liked Marginalized Threat a lot, and I liked the second track because of that sort of mood switch up, but I don't know. I thought that A Step in the Morning Glow, those little shot build-ups, and I don't know, just everything. It was like the perfect song that encapsulated everything on the album.
Yeah, it's a great closer for sure. I hadn't even considered it actually as one of the best, but now that you're bringing it up, that's a legitimate pick. Yeah. And that second song is really good, and I think that flow you're talking about is partly why I think the first half of this record is just so strong, because each song builds on the last one. It's all very cohesive, but each one introduces a new element into the mix. It doesn't sound like the last one. It doesn't get repetitive.
Yeah.
And that's the sign of a really good album, at least one of the signs I look for in this genre, especially.
I agree.
For a really good album.
So what was your favorite track then?
Faint New World was my favorite track off this one, but I also have to highlight every single one of the first 5 songs, I think, deserves mention. Along with the song Fingerprint Mark, and I'll throw the closer in there too. I mean, I think I think it's a very, very strong record, hence why it's number 8 of the year for me. I just think that if the first half is a 5 out of 5, the second half is like 4 out of 5. So it drops off a little bit for me in that second half, but it's not like I think the second half is bad.
Yeah.
So I would just say, if you're going to listen to this, if you don't have the time to listen to the whole album, which if you don't, then you should make time. But if you don't have the time, listen to the first 5 tracks. Statement of Freedom, up until Marginalized Threat. I think that's a really, really flawless run of this like unique brand of screamo post-rock stuff that this band is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were a little naughty there. We talked for 7.5 minutes.
Oh, gee, you got to put the alarm on. I didn't know.
No, but I didn't want to interrupt because we were on a good flow there. And also, you know what? We both shared this album, so I figured we could talk about it for a little bit longer.
Oh, true. Okay, that's actually good because it's double time.
Yeah, so we can sort of we get back to it, we can just skip over.
Okay.
All right, so
from now on, interrupt if it's 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay. So, what timestamp are we at here? All right. So we're gonna hear your number 10 album, and we're about to hit the 14-minute mark, and at 19 minutes, I'll just angrily interrupt. Yeah.
All right. So I will go. My number 10 album. How do I want to introduce this record? Well, I'll say what it is, I guess. So the number 10 album on my list is Sketch for Winter 7, Abyss for Cello, and it's by Louise Bach.
Oh, yep.
And this is an album that I certainly don't think it's flawless. I don't think it's necessarily a masterpiece or anything like that. And partly it's on here because I'm biased towards cello music. And my mom actually plays the cello, so I have always been drawn towards cello-based music. I think it's very atmospheric. Yeah. It's kind of nicely nostalgic for me.
I did not know
and I
that.
think this particular album really encapsulates the vibe really well, the vibe of winter that it's going for, and it does so with really smart arrangements. It's really well performed. The production is great. It's fairly drony. It's not like a very especially active all the time.
Yeah.
But I think that it's atmospheric and it's well executed. It's relatively simple. It's not too long. It's only 5 songs. The third song, Actinic Ray, is one of the best songs of the year. I will defend that song for all eternity. I think it's an amazing track, and I think the rest of the album is pretty good too. So I think for me, this is a pick that was maybe more visceral than I would normally include on a top 10 list. But with this year especially, I think there's room for some kind of feely, at least in a nostalgic sense, albums that are based more on how they make me feel versus how I cerebrally think that it's pushing a genre forward or something.
Yeah.
So that's really why I included this album, and I know you listened to it. So what did you think of this album?
Yeah. So like you listened to it more like from a subjective standpoint rather than trying to objectively critique it. That's sort of what I gathered. Okay.
Yeah.
I did.
Just let me just
No
say
worries.
something to that because I don't want to totally ruin my credibility. I mean, yes, but I also it's not as if I'm suspending my objectivity entirely, right? I mean, there's a subjective, as I said, nostalgic element to cello-based music for me.
Yeah.
But it's not as if I'm totally suspending all my critical faculties and saying that kind of my primary reason for being drawn to the album is the fact that it is that style.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, yeah. I don't want to take up all the time. What do you think?
No worries. Yeah, and like with music, especially of this kind, I feel like a critique has to be somewhere in the middle of like sort of being subjective and being objective. I thought it was good. I listened to it. I agree. It's set like a wintry vibe. Just with this sort of not macabre, but surreal is not the word. Lush cello playing. I thought it was good. I know it was a little bit drony. There was nothing I really disliked about it, but it didn't really have a very strong impact on me either way. I listened to it. The runtime, I think it's like in the high 30s, 38 minutes or something. I'm just guessing here.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was a good runtime. I thought it sounded very nice. It's well produced. The album art's good. It was just something I was like, oh, hey, this is decent, and I don't know if I would go back to it. It felt a little bit samey to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that I thought was decent, and I don't know. I was happy I listened to it because I don't know. I never really I haven't heard like a solo cello album. I listen to albums that are just all bass and I don't know, like those all acoustic guitar albums, like those Candy Rat guys. But it was a first for that, and I liked it in that. And I think the cello is a very nice sounding instrument. Yeah, I was sort of lukewarm on it, but I did enjoy the experience.
Yeah. I mean, Eric Friedlander has a really good cello-based album off the top of my head. One of the Book of Angels series, John Zorn's series, cello-based record. And I'm assuming we're almost at 5 minutes, but I'll just quickly say, I would say... Yeah,
we did hit the 19 just now, but just
oh god, okay, forget. Okay, next.
Oh, all right. All right.
Listen to I listened to Actinic Ray again. That's a great track.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess we're on my number 9.
Yeah. What is your number 9?
Oof. Okay. So we are taking Envy the Fallen Crimson off. I am going to go with Misery Signals, Ultraviolet.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be my number 9.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just picking my number 9s and all my numbers just off the bat, off the top of my head, because I'm not sure. They're too hard to rank. This album was great. I was shocked that Misery Signals was able to return to form immediately after like a 6-year gap between Absent Light and this album. They brought back their old singer Jesse, old singer, screamer, harsh, clean, whatever you want to call him. And they did these tracks. And you know, it's the classic Misery Signals feel, really well produced, some post-rock vibes. And just very, I don't know, very fresh, unique sounding metalcore that Counterparts has really liked to lift off these days. Yeah. I don't know, there was some cool punk sounding parts. There was that one song, what was it called again? Cascade Locks. That was like that 2-minute song with that. I knew it was Cascade something. My memory's just shot. Yeah, but it had that nice kind of post-rocky build-up, and it went into this really crushing part. I don't know, that sick punk part and the Tempest, and yeah, I don't know. How did you feel about this album?
I was surprised how much I liked this album. It wasn't in my top 10, but yeah, I think considering the layoff this band had, they came back pretty strong. I also enjoyed Cascade Locks. The song Sunlifter I thought was fantastic.
Oh yeah,
the ending specifically of that song. And you know, I guess my major problem with this album, if I'm going to point something out, is kind of an issue I have with metalcore more broadly, which is that the vocals get very monotonous.
Yeah.
For me, where they are kind of one-dimensional, yelling vocals over everything. And
I'd actually like to speak to that, if I could intervene. It's funny because I remember we went like on the K&A tour. I think I brought Controller, their third album, along, and that was when they had their second singer, Karl Schubach. And it's funny because Jesse is their singer on the debut, and he had a much more expressive voice on the debut, but he sounded a lot weaker. But now that he's come back and he's replaced Karl, he's doing an imitation of Karl, which I found bizarre. I think I talked to you about this before.
Yeah, you did message me. I had forgotten that, but you had told me that, and that's unfortunate, I think. And maybe kind of lowers the album a little bit in my perspective of it. If it's an imitation of another singer, I don't think that's especially good. I've never heard the debut. I've heard Controller, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I just think for me that takes away from the album. But it's kind of a problem that I have with a lot of metalcore records. A band like Every Time I Die falls under the same thing, the same category for me of the music I find quite absorbing, but the vocals are just very monotonous and mixed really loud all the time, because you have to put vocals center of the mix all the time in rock and metal in every band. And so you end up with these, I think, really kind of oftentimes dynamic and interesting instrumentals that are just like overstrewn with these loud yelling vocals that don't really add a lot to me in that amount.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, in small amounts, sure, like you can accentuate a part or whatever with vocals of that style, but at least add some variation or you know, change it up a little bit. It just kind of blurs the album for me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. For like just in terms of the harsh vocals, I do like love his harsh vocal, that sort of low guttural. Enough for me to put it in my top 10, but you know, it's something stopping me from making it like a top 5 or a top 2 would be sort of the lack of variety. You and all the listeners, you should check out the debut, because he sort of has like higher pitch screams, but he does more of a variety, even though it's a bit weaker across the board. And this album, I don't know, I think their whole discography is really good, but not top 5 material.
I will have to listen to more of them. I am assuming we've hit almost 5 minutes because I'm pulling up my my list here.
Hit the 5 minute mark.
If not, then yes, I think that this is a fun album. Not a top 10 for me, but I think it's worthwhile listening
Five,
if you're
four,
into the band,
three,
into the genre.
2,
And
1.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to do that every time. That's hilarious.
Fair enough.
Okay, my number 9 is an album which you have mentioned actually already in your honorable mentions. My number 9 is Gezon or Gezon, I don't know how you pronounce it, with the album Clue. Clue with a K. This is one of the most fun albums of the year. I love this album, and I know it's flawed in some ways, but it's so eccentric, and it's so cartoony, and it's so kind of like I don't know what word I want to use here. My brain is too fried. But what I'm trying to say is that it puts itself out there. It's kind of really, really uninhibited. That's the word I want to use. This is an uninhibited record. It has some of the best transitions between songs I maybe ever heard. I love the way this album flows. The whole thing flows from one song to the next. There are tons of different styles and genres on here, blended in a relatively cohesive way. And when they're not, I think it's intentional, and the band are kind of thumbing their nose at you. They know that they are playing off tropes, and a song like Soul Material, for example, is out of place, but it knows it's out of place, and they have a lot of fun with it. And I think it's really well produced. Also, I want to point out the production on this album, because I think it sounds, I don't know where they recorded this, right? This is a Japanese band. I don't know where they recorded this, but it sounds amazing. And there's heavy stuff with the song like Replicant and Agiha. Maybe I'm, again, mispronouncing. A couple really fun, heavier tracks. The closer's great. And I already mentioned Soul Material as my other pick, which is this like funky, I don't know, kind of like borderline, I don't know, psychedelic art rock, disco. Like, it's really hard to figure it out. But I was a big fan of this one, and I think you were too, based on its inclusion in your honorable mention. Yeah. So what did you think?
This was a great time listening to this album. When I first started it, the vocals, they take a bit for them to grow on you. Like when I booted up the title track, I was just, at first, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, oh shit, I have to listen to this. But you know what? I don't know. Once I kind of got over that and myself, it started to be a very fun listen. You know what? The closer, it's called I guess. That was probably my favorite song out of all 10 albums you sent to me.
Wow.
Yeah, if I picked a favorite track from your top 10, I think it would be this one. That one stood out, probably one of my favorite songs of the year. It could have been 12 minutes, and I would have loved it.
Yeah.
So pretty. Soul Material, also I have to shout that out as well. That I don't know, it's just so ridiculous with that like that Down with the Sickness, like that screaming bit that they keep peppering in. That I don't know, I had a good time with that. Like the 2-second transition song. It's the whole album's just crazy. But I don't know, it was a very refreshing listen. That just kept growing on me as it went on. You know, this album would probably be like my number 11 or 12. Like,
okay,
it would be there somewhere. Very fun, very well produced, very well performed. You know, you have elements of industrial, elements of noise rock, you know, elements of post rock, post hardcore. Like, I don't know, I feel like you're getting the whole smorgasbord with this one. It was great. That's the extent of what I have to say about it, but I really liked it.
And I think that the way this album starts, I think it does kind of mislead you, and I think that's intentional. Like I felt the same way when this started. I was skeptical of what I was getting myself into. The first 2 songs are kind of rhythmic, almost kind of like, I don't even know how I would genreify what's going on. Kind of drony, but kind of sludgy.
Yeah, there was a bit
relative. Yeah, they're kind of repetitive, like low end, like tom drum heavy numbers with these kind of quirky vocals, and I was expecting the rest of the album to be relatively similar, and I was a little bit like, okay, well, that's fine, but this is not going to be a top 10 record for me. And then and then song 3 comes on and totally just like shifts gears. And then by the time you're almost at the end of the record, you kind of that recontextualizes those first 2 songs, and I end up appreciating them a lot more because they serve a kind of a symbolic purpose in the grander scheme of the album that I appreciate. I think I love when bands thumb their noses at you, when they're just like, when bands like stick their tongues out at you and just like, yeah, well, we're just gonna do what we want, like kind of that Melvins attitude of screw you, you're just a listener, what do you know?
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
album does that to me. This is a really fun album.
Oh, we've hit the 5-minute mark.
Oh, okay. This is so, I love this. It's making the podcast so good.
I was thinking about doing like overdubs of that afterwards, but I just threw it in there right now.
Yeah, just like gain it like 2,000%. Okay.
I don't know, but you said what you needed to say about it, or?
Yeah, we're good. I mean, we're kind of repeating ourselves. What was your number 8?
Oh, my number 8. Okay, we're picking these fast. Next up is I'm going to go with KJJJ, Centro de Dispersion. I don't know how to say it or pronounce it.
Spoiler alert, that is my number 5 album, so you are picking off another one later on my list.
I apologize for stealing your thunder with a couple of these, because like I put them at sooner spots than you. But this was great. I've never heard of this band, despite them being very up my alley. On first listen, I got some Russian Circles vibes. I got some Chon vibes. I got some Buckethead, like Dragons of Eden vibes. The synths are really cool. I don't know, it's very jazzy, smooth math rock that I enjoyed a lot. It's a shame that their band has the name that it has, because you can't find them anywhere. No, it was cool. And the one thing I really liked about this album is it just kicked off right off the bat with Nicole, which I think is a highlight track of the album. That cool off-time rhythm with the synths, and that was great. So that hooked me in immediately. And what was the other one? Some of them are in, I think, is Spanish. Cardis. That was a great track. Mm-hmm. That was probably the most sort of active and sort of fast-tempo, fast-paced song of the bunch. So that was a good time. Those were my 2 favorite, and this was an amazing album. Very fresh sounding. Despite it shared similarities with the bands that I mentioned, but it didn't imitate them really. It was its own thing entirely. So yeah, I don't know. It made me really happy. They sounded a bit like Tortoise as well sometimes.
Interesting comparison. Yeah.
Bit of the kind of dub stuff going on, just a little bit. But I don't know, sort of similar to that Geza and Clue. Like, this was a very fresh sounding album that I enjoyed a lot.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it?
I really love this album. This is probably my most played album of this year, just in terms of sheer number of times I've played it. It's not my number 1 album of the year, right? It's my number 5, which is still really high praise.
Yeah.
But this is an album that it's instrumental for one thing, so I like kind of turning it on, and it's nice music to do other stuff to if I'm doing something else. But also it's music that you can listen to intensely and get a lot out of. It's very technically proficient, as you pointed out, with some of those comparisons to other bands, which I think are apt. Tortoise, and there is a little bit of Russian Circles and some Chon, but I think that the songwriting is really good. Maybe even, I don't want to say better than Tortoise or anything, but it's. I think that this is a collection of well-written, kind of just earnest, relatively modest instrumental math rock, prog rock songs that is just consistently entertaining. It's solid all the way through. There's some really fantastic tracks here. Niomesk is one I would highlight, probably my favorite on the record. It's got this amazing build-up with what sounds like violins in the middle, and I don't know if it's synthesized or if they actually had strings going on. Either way, it sounds amazing. Cardis is my other highlight song off here, which you already described. I also, in closing, want to echo your comment on the band name, which is probably the worst band name I've ever seen. And I mean, well, I'll give it some credit. It's the band name that drew me to the album. I thought, what the heck is this?
Why are they called that? Yeah.
when I found this album, and so I did end up discovering it because of the band name, but it was because I thought it was one of the worst band names. I mean, I think it's 8 J's in the band name, but I actually don't know, and so it's K and then 8 J's, and I have no idea what it means. Maybe there's some weird backstory behind it. I just wish that I think this band actually is fantastic, and I think if they had a more, not even more commercial name, but like a name that you could say, they might find a bigger audience. Because as it stands, this album is, I think, criminally underappreciated. Like, it has very few online ratings, and I haven't heard anyone else talk about it except me and you. So yeah, go listen to this if you're listening to this.
I was just gonna bounce off the Tortoise point. I think this is better than maybe like every Tortoise album, like except like Standards and the debut maybe. And Tortoise has like 7 albums or something. Like, I think it's better than most of the Tortoise catalog.
I think that's fair. I mean, I think that Tortoise's high points are probably better than this. But I will say I go back to this album more than I go back to anything by Tortoise.
Yeah, that's fair enough. No, this was cool. I was very surprised by this album.
Well, yeah, I heard this and sent it to you. I was like, I feel like this is up your alley. Like,
well, it absolutely was. That has been in my rotation for some time now.
Yes, it's and also like the production is really good. The drums on this album sound great, and I don't know where they recorded this. I cannot imagine this band has a big budget or anything. I know nothing about the backstory of this band, how many members there are. I haven't done any research on them at all. I just listened to their album a lot. So good job to whoever is a part of this band, because he made a really good album.
Yeah, no, for sure. And this synths, I don't know, like I don't know if they have like a dedicated keyboard player. Like, I'm assuming they do, but I don't know. All the sort of synths and auxiliary instruments are really neat on this. It adds its own unique flavor to it.
Yeah. And in that way, I would even kind of compare it to Ohms by Deftones. Like, that's another album which I know we're not going to talk about it in detail or anything. It was in my honorable mentions, but that's another kind of rock album from this year that's used synthesizers in an interesting, unique way. I think that maybe is a progression we're going to see more of, more electronic elements being infused into rock. We're already seeing it on some level, but it's even in like the post-hardcore alternative metal scenes, we're seeing a lot of that now, and this album does it really well.
Yeah, we're going back to crabcore, baby.
I hope. Hopefully not. But Attack could have a. Are they even still around? I don't actually know.
From what I know, the guy like made Beartooth, like the Screamer, so that guy left.
Oh,
and then
okay.
Who was it? The original guitar player who did like all the auto-tune vocals. He does Bill Murray. I don't know.
Right.
Both those bands, Bill Murray and Beartooth, to me, like they're fine. I don't know. It's not stuff like I care about enough to hate or like.
Yeah,
it's just a bunch of very okay material. Yeah, I don't know. Not worth talking about on a best of list, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We're really sidestepping the true conversation here.
No, it's all good. We because we're gonna take a bit more time with that one because we both had it in our top 10. KJ, that is KJ times 8. Yeah. So I think you are gonna tell me your number 8. I think that's where we're at.
Well, my number 8 was already mentioned. It's Envy the Fallen Crimson. So we don't need to repeat my number 8. So if you want to go ahead and just list your number 7, we can do that.
My number 7 is, drumroll please, it is Protest the Hero, Palimpsest. Which I don't know what that means, and it feels awkwardly sexual, but I really liked the album. I liked the album cover, and I don't know, I thought this album was sort of like what Scurrilous was meant to be. Because I felt Volition was sort of its own thing, because they had the drummer from Lamb of God who brought his own flavor into it, and it just sounded completely different from their catalog. I find this has some Scurrilous vibes, just sort of in the terms of goofier lyrics, but way better produced, and more riffs, which I love. Yeah, there's some great songs on it. I thought the interludes were nice touches. I don't know, and there's sort of some stuff from like Keziah, which is my favorite album, their debut, which had more sort of punk post-hardcore elements, which I thought they brought back a little bit. Yeah, I thought it was very, very neat. How do you feel about Protest? I know you're kind of mixed on these guys.
Yeah, I've never loved Protest the Hero. I've never been a huge fan of them. I will say I do enjoy some of their material. Blindfolds Aside being a song that I, to this day, really enjoy, as well as some of the material on Fortress I think is really strong. Yeah. This album, to me, which I guess goes without saying, I'm the one talking. This album, it feels so dated. It feels so it feels so processed. It feels very, very. It feels like Guitar Pro the album. If that makes any sense. Like the whole thing is finessed to a T. Like there's not a note out of place. There's not a drum that's misstruck or a cymbal that is missed. It is a flawless package, and I don't think there's a lot of substance to what's there. Nothing especially grabbed me on here. There were moments, for example, the song "The Canary" is one that sticks out to me, where I think that there are some worthwhile riffs going on and some nice vocals, which I actually think the vocal performance is pretty good on this one.
Yeah, I thought Rhodey did a good job on this one.
Yeah, but as a whole, this is just it's as big a cliche as it is. It's not my cup of tea. This sort of just this approach to making metal music. Like maybe and at one point in my life, sure, but as I've kind of like listened to more stuff and I become more pretentious. Like this, just sort of
you're mature
feels
now.
Yeah, I become more mature. It just feels really like, I don't know. It just feels kind of soulless, and I don't get. Again, as pretentious as it sounds, it's true. I don't get anything out of it. It's kind of okay. It gets annoying after a few songs because I realize I could be listening to something else. And to me the whole thing it doesn't feel like it's doing anything new, even for this band. Like I have no problem with a band making adjustments to a formula as they go along. For example, Meshuggah is the classic example of that. I have no problem if you want to refine a sound over the course of multiple albums. This doesn't really, to my mind, do that based on everything I've heard from Protest the Hero previously, which is almost their whole discography.
Fair enough.
In fact, it might be their whole discography. I think I've heard almost every one of their albums. But anyway, it's just there's kind of nothing special about this to me, and maybe I just am ignorant and I don't know enough about their back catalog. But within their own oeuvre, and also within the progressive metal genre as a whole, I don't see this doing a whole lot of interesting things. But I don't know, you disagree, so what do you think?
Fair enough. Well, you know what, I'll say I agree with you on the closer, Rivet. I think that's what you described. It was sort of a protest by the numbers, but the rest of this I have to disagree. I don't know, Gardenius and Gardenius, I don't know. I can't pronounce some of these song names. That was like one of the heaviest things they've done in a while. That was sort of like some Fortress era stuff. That was one of my favorite tracks on the album. There's orchestral bits on Reverie. In the intro had the little, like, sort of orchestra violin shots, which were neat. But I don't know, there's some songs that were kind of guitar pro-y, like Soliloquy. That song got lost in the shuffle a little bit. But I feel like there's enough sort of like cheesy roadie moments and sort of all of these sort of interludes, orchestral touches, sort of softer parts that give it enough of a human element, for me at least. To digest this. Yeah. But music has its opinions, right?
Well, yeah, it's opinions, but I mean, I think that's fair, and you're right about the orchestral moments. I think for me, right, those touches feel very kind of it's like the bare minimum they could have done to differentiate or experiment or try something new without compromising their existing audience. To me, it just that kind of faux progression that
it's
those
very
small
safe to you.
Speak to. Yeah, like it speaks to me to the notion that the band knows they should progress or maybe want to progress, but also don't want to lose their audience. So now we see kind of those evil marketing considerations coming into it, and monetary ideas, and you know, that's an approach, and okay, but to me that doesn't draw me into your album. And so what you're pointing out, I think, is fair, but to me that doesn't qualify as anything especially new in any substantive way in their discography. But also, progressive metal has been doing that stuff for like decades, and I'm not saying that every album has to reinvent the genre or anything, but like,
I thought it was well done though.
Yeah. I mean, you're a band that's put out 5 records. You're pretty big, like for the genre. Like I just wish they would have kind of pushed themselves a little more. And I know they don't take themselves seriously, and frankly, I don't like it when a band doesn't take themselves like when a band who's trying to make this kind of these statements, that if you read these lyrics, these are kind of bold and serious statements behind a lot of these songs. Like, take yourselves a little bit more seriously. Like, don't act like idiots and then try and want us to take your music. Like, pick something. You can't have it doesn't work for me when you're chugging beers and then try like in the same breath. So is it the
lyrics versus like sort of the mannerisms of the band? Is that where you see the disconnect?
I think in certain songs on this record, again, I'll point out the Canary. Yes, I think there's a disconnect between, and again, and this is maybe I'm gonna kind of retreat from my own argument here, because as I make it, I realize it's kind of faulty. But I will double down a little bit on an aspect of what I'm saying, in the sense of like, if you like. And you know what? This is interesting. Now that I'm saying this, I think I'm hitting on a reason why I've never gotten into this band that I've never thought of before. So thank you for this, because I'm just realizing something that I know we're probably going over 5, but let me just get
this is interesting. I'm letting this go.
Yeah, I think my biggest problem with Protest the Hero, and the reason I can't get into them, is because I don't like the fact that they aren't that I can't tell what they are. I can't tell if they're joking all the time, and if I should be taking this music lightly. I can't tell if they're trying to be a really serious progressive musician band who's virtuosic. And that's not to say you can't be both, right? You can have like a Frank Zappa who has humor all over the place and is also a virtuoso, but the lines are drawn well enough with Zappa and with Devin Townsend and these other progressive artists who use humor and whatever, where I can tell what you're going for. With Protest the Hero, it doesn't seem well thought out to me. There's not a lot of thought behind the lyrics, but also what's funny and what's serious, and what are we, and are we just goofing around and writing songs in Guitar Pro and playing really fast? Like, what exactly is this band? And and a lot of people like them, including you. So maybe it's just me who doesn't get it, but that is, I think that's my biggest problem with this band that I've never articulated before. So
Yeah.
interesting.
I'm trying to think. Stuff on this album that's like kind of jokey. I mentioned Soliloquy. It has like a very cheesy chorus, and I think he shouts to like "fuck it" in the song, which that was maybe something that should have been like kept for the live show. I don't know.
Well, yeah.
I think it just depends like how you react to the album, right? Like Kezia slash Kezia and Fortress, they're both like very serious albums because they had Bassman, Arif, he wrote all the lyrics to that stuff, so it was just about gods and goddesses and like ritual sacrifices and all this shit. Then when he left the band, then I think Rhodey started writing all of his own lyrics, so that's why Scurrilous has this major sort of shift in tone, which I think was a bit too much. And I would say Scurrilous is like what you describe of this album, just in my opinion. And then I feel like Volition and Palimpsest, they sort of hit a good middle ground for me, at least, just in terms of like feel of sort of virtuosity, seriousness versus jokiness on the spectrum. I don't know how to describe it better than that, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I hadn't realized that the first two records, the lyrics were written by the bassist. Because I think those first two are their stronger records of their discography. So maybe that is why I'm not feeling it as much from Scurrilous onward.
Yeah, because Rhodey did become the lyricist at that point, so that would change things.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the lyrics, I think they're actually really bad, but I think they've gotten better throughout those few albums. Yeah, I don't know. I guess we don't need to talk about this album anymore. But it just that I think is my biggest issue with it. So maybe and maybe it's just me. I don't know. I just am kind of thinking this through out loud right now.
I hate the album title. I don't know if I've made that clear.
Palimpsest.
Oh, is it palimpsest?
Yeah, I mean that word. It means like a page, like of a text or something. It's or like something that's I'm googling it now because I know it has to do with like textual studies. I've heard it before. Okay, here we go. So it's a manuscript or piece of writing material on which the original writing has been effaced to make room for later writing, but of which traces remain. Okay.
Wow. So I was literally going to say something about like books or texts, like palimpsest, like them, like book, like sort of pages fornicating, and that's actually the kind of the meaning in a way.
Well, and you know what? And this I think brings up a point where, so they call the album palimpsest. It means something reused or altered, still bearing traces of its earlier form. I think they are perceiving this to be a much bigger switch or like jump forward than I am, like the band is, and calling it palimpsest, right?
Wouldn't the album title imply that they think the opposite, though? Unless I'm missing something.
Well, it depends how you read it, right? So palimpsest means something that's being reused but still bearing visible traces of its earlier form. So maybe they mean it in a kind of an ironic sense, right? Of like, oh, we are actually not that, but we're calling it that because we're trying to be kind of funny sometimes.
Fooled you.
Right? At least that's how I might look at that. Or if they're playing it completely straight, then I guess that is a joke in and of itself. It's really hard to tell with this band what they're actually trying to do, and that like irks me, I guess. So anyway, we should move on, I guess. Unless you have anything else to say about this one.
I would frame it, at least for me, I feel like it's a very serious band with a very jokey vocalist, and I think I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
And okay. Take it or leave it. I think we are at your number 7, number 6.
My number 7, yes, and we will adhere to the 5-minute rule because we blew it out of the water on that one.
All right, we're at 54 minutes, so let's say we'll go to the 1-hour mark on this one.
Okay, so my number 7 is a to my mind, I didn't actually listen to a lot of jazz records this year. This was just for whatever reason. I wasn't in the mood. I was, uh, with COVID, I don't know. I wanted to kind of hear stuff that reminded me of better times more,
Yeah.
which is generally rock and metal and that sort of stuff. So, but of the jazz I listened to, my favorite jazz record was one called "We Are Sent Here by History" by a band called Shabaka and the Ancestors, and
Oh
that's my
yeah.
number 7. um, which I think is a really ambitious and really, really um, well executed, well performed, well produced jazz record. It's for subgenre snobs. It is an Afro spiritual jazz record. There are vocals, some jazz poetry going on throughout the record. I would highlight the opening song, "They Who Must Die," as one of the best songs of the year.
Yeah.
I've listened to that song multiple times, and I love it. There's a real live energy, as there should be with good jazz in this album, and it's fairly long. It's about an hour, if not over that, which is probably one of the flaws. It's maybe a little bit too protracted for its own good, so it kind of overshoots its mark slightly. But I appreciate the ambition. I think what's here is all ranges from good to incredible. And I think it's just a really solid and worthwhile jazz record. I mean, what did you think about it?
Oh, I thought this was excellent. Yeah, this I haven't heard much like this, especially this year. Like you, didn't listen to tons of jazz. I do like a little bit for my job because we demo a lot of jazz and
Oh, yeah.
sort of like older blues stuff. But nothing like this. This is, at least from my experience, is a fairly out there jazz record. All the instruments, they're doing really interesting stuff, but it all sort of manages to fall into place really well. As you said, there's like some spoken word poetry and stuff. I thought that was decent. I maybe preferred the instrumental passages a bit more. This is an album I kind of fully got lost in listening to it a few times. There's so much going on, and it's a long runtime. I couldn't name a favorite track. The opener grabbed me, I remember, but it's one of those things where I came out of it being kind of like, what happened? Like, I couldn't pick out my favorite parts. It's very dense and detailed, and lots of arrangements and instrumentation. And it's something that probably deserves a bit more of my time. I did maybe 3 full listens of it. And I know I'm going to listen to it more. And it's something that'll probably grow on me. And if we did year-end lists like a year late, it would maybe be in my top 10. But
Right.
it's a great album that I would probably give like 4 out of 5 or something. My only real critique of it is I find it to be a bit impenetrable. Like, I can't really name highlight songs, but, I can't really name songs that stood out as bad.
Right.
Yeah. This is a lot of very, like, non-critique from me, but, I don't know. It's sort of, I equate this album to sort of, like, getting lost in like, the rainforest or something. Or like the redwoods. I don't know. Very beautiful, but I have no idea what's going on.
I think there's a lot going on this album that I need to listen many more times through to fully process, because this is, like you said, it's a dense album. It's ambitious. I think there's a lot of thematic work going on here that I haven't fully processed yet. I think that is only going to reveal itself with time to me. The song "Go My Heart Go to Heaven" I think is amazing. That's another one I would highlight. And then my third favorite was probably "Behold the Deceiver." Those are the other 2 I would pinpoint. But this is one of those albums where I don't know if I have fully processed it yet.
Yeah.
Maybe I never will, but I can try, and I think that I've listened to it a few times. I just think it's really I think it's really really ambitious, and I am drawn to albums that like shoot for the stars. Like
Yeah,
at least they're trying to do something, whether or not it totally gets there. Which
it's
I don't
very
think this
ambitious.
album. Yeah, I don't think this album totally hits it. I think it gets really close, and I think that maybe like their next record that these guys put out would be like a 5 out of 5 album. But
Oh,
I can see like I see the seeds of something amazing, and there are moments here, certain songs, the scale of what they're trying to do that's just very impressive. So, hence its inclusion on my list.
yeah. And with that, we have hit our 5 minute mark.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that was a good one. I think I am up with my number 6. And for number 6, I'm just gonna pick these in seconds.
Number
I'm
6.
gonna go with Hugo Kent, "Far From Home."
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that at 6. This very cool trip hop album. It was all made by a producer, I believe. This is someone I just stumbled upon off of like Rate Your Music. Just wanting to get more into trip hop. It was really good. Lots of different instruments, cool rhythms, some pan flute. I heard sort of a lot of Eastern strings, sitars. What is it? The koto, and yeah, it was really great. This is another album, sort of like Shabaka, that I got lost in a bit because it has a bit of a longer runtime. But I had a few highlights. Some changes in feel in the song "Sure the Sun Will Rise." They added some sort of vocals that had a bit of a reggae feel going on. And even the song before that, "The Second Sun," that was a really neat track. This reminded me a bit of the Bonobo debut, "The Black Sands." I don't know if you ever heard that.
Parts of it.
Yeah. Just like sort of very almost Eastern sounding trip hop, which I don't know. This made me want to like go and find all the trip hop albums I can find and collect.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's very pleasant sounding. I feel like I could put this on in almost any setting, listen to closely, listen to passively, and I don't know if this is like a great praise to it, but it's almost like the perfect background music. I would put this on like for anything. Also, great album cover. How do you feel about this guy?
The album cover is pretty good on this one. I think this is a really fun album. I think it's a fun little album. I don't think it's like for me it's not a top 10 record or anything.
Yeah.
I think it is maybe a little one-dimensional. A lot of the songs follow similar formulas, similar vibes. They feel like variations on a theme almost. But it's a lot of fun. I mean, the song "The Second Sun" you already pointed out. That's one that's I've repeated a few times. "Before Midnight Tonight" is great.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe a little bit chintzy or something. It's a little bit
Chintzy? What?
yeah, like it's a little bit kind of what's another synonym?
Like
I could
produced?
use? Well, yeah, like I mean, like it feels kind of fragile, like sort of like I think I'm gonna stick with chintzy. I know that
All right.
generally means kind of like a little cheap, and I kind of stick by that. It feels a little bit not because of the production quality, or that's not what I'm saying, but like it's something about the vibe and the kind of like I think it's the one dimensionality to me, like it which isn't always a bad thing, but in this case I think part of those variations that I'm talking about, like I think a fundamental root almost of what's unifying these songs is a sort of maybe slightly God, what word do I want to use? There's something like not especially like foundational or something here. They feel a little bit I don't know, predictable maybe. It's some of the way these songs go. They're a little bit repetitive sometimes. So it's like flawed. It's almost like chinks in the armor or something like of this album. And I think that like the underlying ideas are kind of cheap a little bit, and like not cheap in the sense of they sound like they were recorded for very little money. Like it's very well produced, but just it's sort of like a cheap in the sense of like predictable kind of emotional payoffs being explored here. With that said, I think that there are many individual songs that are great, and I'm being a little hard on it, but I did like it, but I think it is kind of background music ish, and I think I'm frustrated by it because it didn't have to be that way. If there was a little bit more kind of I don't know, more density or something to these songs. I'm rambling a little bit, but hopefully there was a coherent point somewhere in there.
No, I understand your point completely. You know what? It's more just the degree by which each of us are kind of bothered by that fact. Because from my point of view, I'm like delighted to have sort of like a pleasant album that fills like a background music niche and just sounds really nice. And I know that sounds like I'm sort of shitting on the album, but I don't know. I almost love it for the reasons that you described, and I don't know how to explain that very well. Yeah, I don't know. It's sort of like when I want to put on something that I don't have to like get emotional payoff out of, that I can just sort of put on for the sake of putting on, and is sort of consistently high quality. That's sort of what I found with this, and sort of in a way that a bunch of soundtracks they invoke the same feeling. I can't really describe it in a non-jarbled way, but I think you can tell what I'm talking about.
I think we're both highlighting the same thing. It's just different reactions to it. It is kind of cinematic, but I think it's a little bit too... It's not like a grand enough scale to be a truly cinematic experience for me. It's more like a like a VHS home recording, like
yeah, fair enough.
Or something. Anyway, okay, I'll go to my number 6.
Yep.
Which is an album that is in many ways the polar opposite of the album that we just discussed. This is not a background music album. This is not an album that I think it makes for any kind of easy listening, but it's an album that I really like, and it's an album I am aware you did not like, so this should be interesting. It is Prurience Casablanca Flamethrower, my number 6. And briefly, I will try and defend this from your vicious attacks. This album is, I think, Prurience... maybe best one since Frozen Niagara Falls. It is very noisy. It's at least in subgenre a harsh noise record, if not primary. There's a death industrial, dark ambient vibe to this one. It is very loud. It is very aggressive. There are ferocious screams, but there's also dynamism to this. For example, Sphere from Christ's Side, one of the best songs of the year, is very placid almost, and that's not exactly the right description for it, but it's a very kind of beautiful song amidst all of this chaos. And then the chaos is great. A song like Black Iceberg, which is the opener, is one of my favorite songs of the year. Follow it up with Peace and Bread Humiliation, a great song. I'm not going to say it's flawless. I think that it is much like the We Are Sitting Here by History, maybe a little protracted, particularly in the middle of the record. But it's a really strong noise, dark ambient album, which I want to know why you hate.
Oh man. Okay. Well, I'm actually going to reference our first live podcast that we did last year,
Right.
the 2019 list, and we did 5 albums then. And you know, I won't lie, you kind of ran me through the gamut, just sort of with the albums you gave me to listen to. But you know what? I felt like each of them, whether I was super into them, like the Euboa album, that left a great impression on me, versus maybe something like Caligula, which I wasn't as big on. They each sort of left a different impression on me, and I remember all of them, along with Shoo Shoo as well, just in terms of the more sort of noise, death industrial kind of material, right? This, it just felt like a whole lot of nothing to me. I'm just going to be kind of brutal. It's just a whole lot of ugly nothing. You know, none of it I didn't find like abrasively bad. But I found it repetitive. I found sort of the noises were ugly. I don't know, if I talk about listening to Shabaka and the Ancestors, like being lost in the redwoods, this would be like being locked into some like broken warehouse or something with like the machines malfunctioning and like you have to stay there overnight. That's where this album mentally placed me. A lot of my descriptions are like, where do I picture myself when I'm listening to these? Right. And it's just, it all kind of ran together for me. You know, there's a few tracks that had some vocal, which added a bit of variety to it, which I didn't mind that. I'm just looking at the track listing here. I think it was it Normandy Reaper? I don't know. It was something near the middle of the album where it kind of, there's sort of a pseudo highlight track for me. It just, I don't know, with like sort of the limited amount of death industrial albums I've listened to, this one felt like it had the least variety. And it just sort of, it left me wanting more. I felt like it was too minimalist for its own good. A lot of it's just me not getting it. That's a big part of it. Sort of like with you with Protest, which that's a very like maximalist band, and it's too maximalist for some people. But I feel like on the other end of the spectrum, there's things that could be too minimalist for some people, which unfortunately that kind of falls into this for me, and it just didn't really hit.
Yeah. Well, I think just, and we're almost going to hit 5, but I'll just add that, I mean, it's an album about war, and I haven't fully grasped all of the themes or anything. Whoa, hello. But I think
some of the titles allude to that. Yeah,
and I think that like palpable dread you're pointing out, I think that's intentional, and it's like, you know, watching a war film is not a nice experience, but it's something that is rewarding on some emotional level, or right, or however you want to characterize that experience. I get where you're coming from, and I kind of thought you would hate this, to be honest, but like I had to be honest and put it on my list because I really liked it. It is definitely more repetitive than those other albums you mentioned in terms of its sonic palette, right? Like Euboa and Caligula and those records have more instrumentation and even more, I would say, in some sense, traditional kind of song arrangements. Like Appalachian Joy or whatever, pick a song off one of those records. This is very much rooted in noise, drone, ambient ideas. It is... but I will say I don't think the repetition is like across the record. I think it's within the songs themselves. Like each song stands out as a separate piece, but within those constructs, they do have a fair amount of repetition. There's like details going on, and it's one of another album I think I have to listen to multiple times to fully grasp. But anyway, I'm ranting. What is your number 5?
My number 5. We're going to find out right now. All right, what's left? My number 5, I am picking the illustrious Aesop Rock Spirit World Field Guide.
Okay.
Going with that for my number 5. This is a man, a producer that I feel I'm just killing time here, is very consistent across his discography. He's had some sort of complacent points, but I feel like most of his albums are of very high quality. This album is another big step up. It has really great beats. He is rapping at honestly an even higher level than sort of the first half of his discography, using a wider variety of flows, and even the beats. Like, he's managed to make a set of beats that are very varied instrumentally, but they seem to all form a cohesive whole across the board. One of the only cons I really have with this album would be some of the shorter throwaway tracks, like 1 to 10, where it's just like, why is that even there? They just seem like some sort of like asides of some man that's on an acid trip or something that no one's interested in except him. No, and I think his lyricism compared to like a lot of other rappers is next level entirely. Just sort of his grasp of vocabulary, his vernacular, whatever you want to call it, is great. I don't know, and there's cool moments. It's got that side quest with the really weird rhythms and stop-starty rap he does. And I don't know, there's other really just good highlights of songs. My favorites were The Gates and Coveralls. Also, another amazing album cover. Yeah, so you heard this. How do you feel about it?
You know, I think it's Aesop Rock is awesome, and I have one of my favorite just rappers. This album has one huge, enormous problem for me, and that is the production. And it kind of ruins the entire thing.
Like the vocals,
in my
right?
opinion. I think it sounds so awful that I almost can't listen to this album. And there are some songs that are so good, like Crystal Swords, I believe is the correct title, where I can get past it for a song, like, and then I try and listen to the whole album, and it feels like he's rapping into, I don't know, like a pipe, and like that was recorded. It's so tinny. Vocals are really loud. The beats, which are good, are mixed too low. It's all really full of treble. I don't know what happened. Like, I read a theory online that he recorded the vocals separately and then needed to give them definition in a professional studio. I don't know if that's true. Whatever was the case, like, they just sound really weird to me. I don't know if you felt that, but it, like, I could barely listen to this thing for more than 10 minutes.
Did you listen to it on headphones?
No, I was using the computer speak. Is it a better experience? I was so disgusted I didn't want to even bother with the headphones, but like, does that make it? I thought that would make it sound worse, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I listened to it on speakers. That I think it just didn't bother me as much. That might be why. But
maybe, yeah.
No, you have a valid point. You're not wrong. Like, there's no low end in his vocals. Like, it's like he took the low frequency bands out. Yeah.
Like, it's like, these are good songs. I'm like dying for like this is an album that needs a remix immediately. Like, I don't often think that, but I think this album specifically needs like the Spirit World Field Guide edited version remix or something. Like, I don't know. I think with like mix work, this could be amazing.
Yeah. The one like issue I do have with critiquing music is not to like humble brag, but the Fairview Hi-Fi lifestyle just affords like me to listen to everything on like massive speakers. So like nothing really sounds too tinny to me. Yeah. Which I've never actually listened to this album on headphones. I've only listened to it on the speakers. So maybe I ought to try that, and then we'll have to remake the entire episode, and I'll take it off the list.
Just put it on, put on a different album that's put on another random rap album, and then put this on right after, and you'll hear what I mean.
Well, some of his own albums are produced better than this one. Skeleton was done, I don't know, it's just mixed better. Like, you're right about that.
Like Labor Days had amazing, like all his other stuff sounds great. I don't know what happened here, but so that's the reason I can't endorse this album is that fatal flaw to my mind. But
yeah, fair enough. I'm seeing a bit of a theme in this episode. I feel like it's a lot of the flaws that I think you find fatal. It stops me from giving it a 5. Like the mix on this sort of drops it from a 4.5 to a 4 or something like that.
Oh, okay.
So it's more just the severity in which these issues affect the listening for us.
Yeah, I mean that's fair, and we're highlighting the same things. It's just different degrees of reaction to them. My number 5 was the KJJJ thing, so we'll skip that.
Okay.
My number 4 was an album which I actually recently listened to part of again. This was another one very earlier on in the year, like Envy, where I heard it and I thought this is amazing. So I recently listened to it again, and it got even better.
Yeah.
With time. And the album is Nero DeMarte and it's called Emoto, and it is the best tech death post-metal album of the year, and I really, really liked everything about this album, with a few reservations, but generally I think this is an incredibly good representation of those genres. The opener is one of the best metal songs of the year, Sisyphos.
Yeah.
And then you have and the sound here, the drumming is absolutely insane. Maybe the drum performance of the year. In fact, I'll say it is the drum performance of the year on this thing. The vocals are great. They're not too they kind of remind me of Gojira in a way, where they're not too guttural all the time. There's some variation. It's in Italian, but you can.
Gojira is a big part of this album's recipe. Sorry, but
yeah,
go on.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think especially in the vocal, I think there's a Gojira kind of element to it. It's produced really well. It sounds great. There's the production-wise, kind of gives me vibes from Gorguts' Colored Sands, a similar kind of natural vibe, which I much prefer to hyper-triggered stuff in tech death. And the most interesting thing about this album for me is it has this weird, palpable atmosphere to it that I can't define. It's sort of like a tense otherworldliness, and I've never experienced anything quite like it before in any other album. And I think if you kind of really let yourself be absorbed into it, you'll see what I mean by that. It's sort of
has a bit of an alien quality to it.
Yeah, it's sort of alien, but not in a science fiction way. It's almost it's really difficult to describe, and that's why I'm calling it an indefinable quality. There are spaces on this album of extreme ambience that is probably one of my few reservations, is I think they kind of go on too long in spots, but it really does heighten that uneasiness, that kind of almost uncanny atmosphere on this thing. But what did you think of this?
This I think was the first out of the albums that off your list that I picked up. I chose this one first. It's massive sounding. A lot of different elements going on here. There's some ambient, like you said. You got some Gojira vibes. You got some tech death. You got some sludge metal going on. They managed to make it all into a, I'm not going to say digestible, but tasty blend. My issue with it is that there's too much of it. I some of the ambient parts do go on a little bit long. I feel maybe the album could have used a 10-minute trim, a 12-minute trim. It's a lengthy piece, but I don't know, it's sort of a better version of From Mars to Sirius, though. 'Cause it has a lot of that, and it adds in enough different feels and vibes to not sound repetitive. So I don't know. It's unique in like the genre blending it does, but I don't think they sort of make their own genre or anything. But I don't know. Overall, I enjoyed it. It's a very demanding album, which I think is a pro and a con. So it demands to be listened to intently and not passively. So you need to pick your battles in that regard. No, I enjoyed it, and I would maybe put it in my honorable mentions. That it was a good time. Hello?
No, the podcast.
Hello?
Here, the podcast call, it stopped
Uh-oh.
working, and we weren't able to communicate effectively.
I hate when
Yeah, I
that
absolutely
understand.
understand. Yeah,
Of course.
Yes,
Absolutely.
of course.
Start the podcast already.
Okay. Yeah. I think you're right. Like, they're not creating a new genre or anything. It's more the atmosphere that they put out there that I just find intriguing. But yeah, and I mean, I think that's pretty much all I'm gonna say on this one. And it is long. It's like a 68-minute long album. I didn't find it too long on the whole. I think it could be trimmed here and there. But it's not like I would cut a whole song out or anything.
Yeah. Like, this album's
anyway.
a 3.5 for me. Like,
Okay.
basically my down points are I find it too long, and you have to, like, it demands your attention, which I don't like sometimes. But, like, other than that, I think it's great.
Yeah. Fair enough. What is your number 4?
Number 4, what is left? I'm picking Locust by Satyr.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This that was a tricky one. I was thinking between two, but this album's great. This is one of the first I heard on the year, and it managed to kind of stay around my top albums for a while. This band came out of nowhere for me. It was just off a random Facebook ad. I don't know. I think it's like concise 10 really solid progressive metal, post-hardcore, prog rock kind of tracks. You get a bit of Chon, a bit of Protest, a bit of DGD, a bit of Idola. I don't know, all that good stuff. Really great riffing, really great drumming, and I think the mix on this album might be my favorite out of my top 10 in terms of like kind of the more rock albums. I think it's really well mixed. Vocals really good. Just really great riffing. Some of the best riffs I've heard in a while. Pathing is absolutely insane. I don't know, some of those chugs that are just like scrapes that aren't frets are wild. Just those breakneck paces. I also really liked Picayune. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And Apogee. Two also very catchy and insane songs, respectively. Yeah, I don't know. My one sort of dislike about this album is it sort of has a bit of like a we go to music school kind of vibe. Like, some of it's like really clinical. And that's what makes it not a 5 to me. Like, I do find it a bit like show-offy. I don't know. Like, it's sort of like it's like turning its nose up at you, kind of like, good luck digesting this. But I'm always up for the challenge, so I did enjoy it. I don't know, you heard this, what do you think?
I had a different reaction to it actually than you. I didn't actually take it as pretentious really at all. I mean, a song like Mushroom, for example, I think is really kind of just goofy,
Oh,
fun.
the instrumental, yeah.
Yeah, and in a different way than like with Protest, where I don't know what they're going for. To me, I understood this was kind of a fun, like relatively lighthearted, technical kind of showpiece, post-hardcore, mathy, prog metal kind of thing. And I liked it. I went into this and I thought, oh god,
really
here's
fun.
Dance Gavin Dance. Yeah, there's going to be another one of those like DGD clones, but like it was fun. The song Perigee was probably my favorite on the album. I've listened to that multiple times since I first heard it. So thank you for that. It was great. And I already highlighted Mushroom. I think the tracks you pointed out are good. I don't think this is like going to rock my musical worldview or anything.
Yeah.
This is a very well performed, really well performed, relatively well produced, fun, kind of lighthearted and straightforward post-hardcore record. Like it's to me, there were more than one record on your list that kind of falls under this banner, and this was one of the better ones, I thought. So I liked it again more than I was expecting to.
Yeah, it's very consistent across the board. It's just like 10, I think, really good to excellent tracks. And yeah, the mix is amazing. I've already said that, but yeah, I don't know. I for a debut from a 4-piece band, I thought it was really great. Because they don't have any standalone vocalists, which is wild too. They the guitar players just do all that, so they're very talented. Yeah, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. It's probably 1 out of the 10 I listen to the most consistently. Really good time. Yeah, the reason I don't give it a 5 is just I found they were trying to stunt on me a little bit too hard, which is the first time I've actually complained about that. But
I mean, there's a I think a bit of self-awareness there. Like, to me, it's not too like, to me that bugs me when a band's like really seriously shoving it in your face. I think there's enough I think there's enough self-awareness where it doesn't bug me too much.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, fun pick. It was a fun album. My number 3 is one we can just jump right into. It is Clipping's Visions of Bodies Being Burned.
Okay.
Which is, I think, Clipping's best record, which is saying something because they have a really solid discography. This is kind of a sequel to their last record, which was also a horrorcore excursion for them, which is now kind of becoming their at least with these 2 records, their sound, and I'm totally here for it. I think they're both excellent albums. This one's especially good. It is impeccably produced. The rapping performance of David Diggs is absolutely nuts. I think he's probably
he's great on here.
Yeah, he's in the top 5 living rappers in my opinion. And I think it's just very consistent throughout. Like, much like the last record, there is not a weak spot throughout this whole thing. I can't point out one real moment on here where I was like, oh, great, or this is boring me, or I've heard this before. Like, it's consistently engaging. All the songs work together. And to highlight a few specifics, Say the Name, amazing. 96 Neve Campbell, fantastic. Enlacing, which is the second last song on here. What a song. I've listened to that so many times. Pain Every Day is awesome. And I love the way that they are bringing noise to the forefront. I mean, they're using noise in creative ways and kind of exposing it to a mainstream audience, which makes sense because I know that the other 2 guys in Clipping are like experimental music heads, so
Yeah.
I think that's pretty fun. And you like this one too, right?
Yeah, there was one point where I would have put this in my top 10. Envy kind of etched it out, but that still means that I really liked this. I like that sort of thematically a sequel to the last one. There's some great tracks on here. The one that jumped out at me the most you mentioned was Pain Every Day. That's the one has all those drum switch ups and those drum breaks. That was just, I don't know, that sounded wild. I don't know, She Bad was good. And Say the Name, it's sort of like a pseudo title track in a way. Because they're just, that sort of rhythmic visions of bodies being, that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I like that a lot. very well produced. It maintains sort of thematic consistency from front to back, while also being quite dynamic. You know, the only, again, reasons I give it a 3.5 or a 4 instead of a 5 is maybe I wanted it to be less thematically consistent. This gets into like really like subjective stuff. Yeah, like I think this album's really good. For clipping, I would maybe put that sort of self-titled, like all consonants album before it.
Right.
I don't know, that one had I don't know, that just had more standout tracks to me. I feel like there's a bunch here that get kind of lost in the shuffle, but as a consistent piece of music, I think it's very great.
Yeah. I think like also being a horror fan helps with this one. Like that's really a big part of this album and the last one. They're playing on a lot of stuff, like kind of horror genre movies.
It's a horrorcore album.
Samples and yeah. I mean, so I think that like helps my affinity for it too, because I love that stuff. But I also think they use interludes really well, an underrated skill with any one of these kind of records. And
it's really seamless. Like
yeah.
A lot of the times they can feel kind of out of place, but I think the interludes do work here very well.
Yeah, and it's tough to make those feel substantial, but they actually do here. And yeah, production amazing. The intro track is nuts with the harsh noise blast that comes in. It's great.
Yeah, I like that.
Anyway, I mean, what was your number 3? We're into our top 3 at this point.
Yeah, we're getting there. I'm picking these on the fly, as you know. This is tough. All right, I'm gonna go Freddie Gibbs, Alfredo, but it's these top 3. Like you could order them anyway. I'm gonna say Alfredo. Alfredo, it's pretty wild because he just put out Bandana last year, which was also that was my album of the year last year, and that might be part of why I don't want to put this number 1, because I don't like having repeaters. But no, this he does a collaboration with The Alchemist instead of Madlib, and they do 10 very consistently great songs. A few features are peppered throughout. Tyler the Creator, Rick Ross, and the 2 parts of Griselda, Benny the Butcher and Conway the Machine. They all fit onto this album really well. And it's a good amount of features, not too many features. And, I don't know, some of his best rapping. With the guy from Clipping for You, Freddie, I think, is a top 5 rapper for me, at least. God is Perfect is nuts, along with Baby Shit. And some of the beats, like Look at Me and Something to Rap About, just very sort of lush, jazzy, like it's something that you'd want to have on vinyl. Just very warm sounding. And that kind of goes into the way this whole album's produced. I think it's excellently produced. The Alchemist has been on all sorts of great products, and I think this is one of his finest pieces of work. This is an album I can't I've been trying to like say bad things about each album in my top 10. Like, why isn't it perfect? This one, I maybe wanted a little more. It's a little short for me. But I don't know, 35 minutes, it doesn't overstay its welcome. But I think it's 35 minutes very well spent. I don't think they waste a minute here. How do you feel about this one?
I really liked this album. I liked it a lot, and I actually think it's interesting that you didn't find this one too thematically kind of like repetitious in that sense. Because to me, this album is very like really playing off a theme similarly to Clipping. I mean, in the sense that all of these songs I think flow together really well. They all present a very distinct vibe. I love the song Frank Lucas.
Oh, that's a good
fart
song.
sample. Oh yeah, no, it's not actually a fart as we've discussed.
That's
like,
very
that's an
grimy
amazing-
sounding track. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that song. I also God is Perfect, great song. I love the album title and cover art to pull a U and mention those things. I think they are
Godfather.
great.
Yeah. Past and
Um,
Godfather.
Like, I think they're perfect for this album. Like, I think that's kind of a stroke of genius. And I agree with you that I think it's too short. I think that like
It could have used a couple more tracks, like go to
yeah,
12 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of like there's too much brevity to it. It's almost like it's presenting a very small vignette or something, and I want to see the full movie. Like, it's sort of like what's here. I think is for the most part really good, but it feels almost like an EP. Like, it's just barely a full length album almost. At least the way that it. And I know it's 34 minutes long, which I guess fair enough. It's album material at that point, but it just something about it feels very EP-ish, like, and I wish there was more substance to it, but I liked what was here a lot. I did like it.
Yeah. And I don't know, one thing I would want to point out too is I haven't heard Tyler the Creator like rap like that since like Goblin and Wolf. Like
Oh yeah.
it's really
yeah.
changed
That's
nowadays.
something to rap about, the big song off this album.
Yeah, that I don't know, that was a nice like return to old Tyler. I like both Tylers, but we got a little taste of vintage Tyler there, which was nice. And you know what, even like Rick Ross, someone a very polarizing figure for me, at least. Like, he has some good stuff, some really bad stuff. He fits in well here too.
Yeah. I think that song was good. I think it was a weak song of the bunch. I just wish there was more. And I can't like pick apart anything else about this one. It was very solid. It was fun. Gave me a GTA Vice City vibe throughout.
Yeah. Well, he actually him and the Alchemist did a song on GTA 5.
Oh, okay. There you go.
With one other guy. Yeah. So they there's some rap station on there, and they like wrote a song for that, which is pretty
that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just gave the album gave me that kind of Miami Vice sort of vibe, which I like. Godfather, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
You got your number
good
two.
pick. Yeah, my number two. Oh boy, my number two. Here is an album that probably in another year would have been my number one, and I will get to why my number one is my number one when we get to number one.
Yep.
But if I keep talking like that forever, you're gonna have to do a number one before we finish recording this. My number two album is Paysage Divers Imwald, and this is, I think, one of the best black metal albums. I want to say of the decade, but it's 2020. Of the last 11 years, it's one of the best black metal albums. I think Paysage Divers has, to my mind, with this album, has 5 albums that are essential listening in a genre, and that's like unusual for any one artist.
Oh, like this and 4 others.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that the albums Kirker, the self-titled album, Crystal and Isa, Winter Cult, however you pronounce that, Winter Cult, and then this one now, I think are all like must-listen 4.5 to 5 level black metal albums. This guy, Wither is his name, Winther, he also does the Dark Space stuff, right? He also is the
You mentioned that, I
mastermind behind
think.
Dark Space. He is like unbelievably adept at creating these absorbing black metal lo-fi atmospheres, and like with really good riffs and songwriting. The songs move. To me, they do not get too repetitive ever on this album. It's 2 hours long. I'm not bored throughout it. Even the 11-minute interlude Flug, which is in the middle, is perfectly placed. One very minor complaint I'll bring up is that it maybe gets a little bit too predictable with the nature recording and then abrupt entry of a black metal song, and we kind of follow that formula throughout the album. But I think there are enough variations in the actual songs that it doesn't bug me too much. And I think Über den Baumann, which is the second song, is the best metal song of the year. And I can anticipate what you're going to say, so I won't spoil it. But what did you think of this?
Fair enough. I don't know what I think of this. It's
Oh, okay.
it's not like, I don't know. It's not like the Prurient album. I don't feel negatively about it. It's I get frustrated by it sometimes. My best comparison, like, you know how you feel about Spirit World Field Guide? Like, I
Okay,
probably
yeah.
feel this like times 20 about Imwald. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just, I know it's sort of like a genre tenet to have albums and songs mixed this way, but it doesn't stop me from really hating that fact. Like, I don't know, the opener, as it goes on, like the 9-minute song, it starts to open up to you a bit, and these synths come in, and it all sounds really good. But sometimes I wish the fog would just be removed a bit, even, so I could hear all the details, because I feel like it's dense and there's a lot that I want to digest. But it's like the album doesn't let me in fully, and maybe that's on me as a listener. Yeah, my speakers, like, they can fix Aesop Rock, but they can't fix this for me, unfortunately. I don't know, things I liked. It is 2 hours. It's not something I would listen to in one sitting, but I think all the material, just like as songs, is good. It's, you know, it's not something I would listen to as one long piece of music. I listened to this in like 2 sittings, I think. Yeah, and it's good material, and I like the nature recordings. It breaks stuff up. It is a bit of, it's sort of that flow, that order of operations gets a bit repetitive, as you mentioned. But I don't know, I think it's still effective, and it's better than not having the interludes there. I love the music. I hate the production. that's really just
Fair enough.
the brass
And
tacks
I
of
think
it.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be the complaint with this kind of style of black metal, right? I will say that I think here's what I would request of you. Like,
Sure.
one time try this, where it's winter now. Pick a day when it's like snowing or there's some kind of snowstorm outside. Like, put on headphones, just put this album on and like go walk around. Like, just go for like a walk for like even just the first like 3 songs of this record or something. I think you'll
I'll be back at
absorbed
like midnight
into it.
then if I even did the first 3 songs.
Yeah,
I'm just messing with you. But yeah.
I think it's like 25 minutes if you add up
Yeah.
the first 3. Like just like do that, and I think it'll open itself up to you, because that production does add a palpable kind of atmosphere to it that I
Yeah.
think is tough to kind of penetrate if you're passively listening, or you're listening even on speakers. It's tough. Like, there's something about this style of black metal that there's a specific circumstance where I think it opens itself up to you, and if you really kind of focus on what's going on, it's definitely a demanding album, and I do not blame anybody who doesn't want to do this or doesn't like it or whatever, but like, I think the optimal strategy for trying to penetrate this album is, pick a suitable like environmental condition, put on headphones, and like just walk around and like focus on the music that's going on. I think it's almost like meditative in a way. It's closer to ambient music than anything, and like
It has those
kind of
qualities.
absorbs you.
I agree. Have you listened to this on headphones?
Yeah, I actually did last night.
I'm not, like, at the risk of like sounding like a massive boomer here, like when I was maybe about 40% through the album, I was just and the music is great. Like, I'm just gonna preface this, but it was just like, oh fuck, my ears hurt. It's
I
just
didn't listen to the whole thing.
in
Like,
one
I didn't
sitting
go
on
for a
headphones.
2-hour
Yeah,
walk.
yeah, I
Right.
understand that, but
Yeah.
it's like it's just the graininess. It's unfortunate because I feel like this album has a ton of positive qualities, but it's just sort of the foggy sheen. But I guess it's a vibe that sort of has to be digested, has to be penetrated, and just sort of taken in. Yeah, I was trying to avoid using that word. No, but what you described makes sense. Just sort of picking the right atmosphere. And this, I don't know, this album makes me feel like I've like gone backpacking like to Norway in the winter, and like I've gotten lost or something, but it's really pretty, but I'm also very cold and tired.
Yeah.
That's where this album plays me.
Yeah, and we can move on. I'll just one more comment is like, it is grainy and everything, the production, but like I do think that if like given enough kind of exposure to it, or like enough time kind of spent absorbing it, like that becomes a positive, and like it kind of stops bugging you.
Yeah. Fair.
Like specifically with this album, I'm not saying this is going to happen with every black metal album that has low production. Like there are some out there, for example, Natten's Madrigal, that I can't listen to for extended periods because it is too harsh for me. Like, but with this one, I think it's actually not that bad, honestly. And like I think that I think that like you could easily kind of to some degree get past it. I'm not saying listen to all 2 hours in a row or anything, but like just listen to like just do like the first 2 songs and just see, right?
Yeah, no, it's a great piece of music, and yeah, it's hopefully I can kind of get past that someday. But
you might not, and that's okay too. But I'm just saying, like, that's like the environment this is designed to be listened in, and like I did this last night. Like it works. Like you get like visions of fjords, or I guess this is French, I should say, visions of like the Eiffel Tower when you're walking around listening to this in the snow. Anyway, yeah, what was your number 2?
My number 2. Should I go full nerd this year with my album of the year? Yeah, I think I have to. Yeah, so number 2, we are going with the Boys and Pulse's Speak It Into Existence. This album, this was one I didn't really think of much when like I first heard it. I was like, oh, it's sort of jokey, kind of post-hardcore album, you know, it's decent, but there's not really like a ton that jumps out at me. But I don't know, as I listened to it more, researched the band a bit, I started getting really into it, and it sort of flew up my top 10. It was maybe like a number 14 for a while. But I don't know, it's songs like Olivia Wilde, Louisiana Purchase, they all just like really started to grow on me, and because there's a lot of little details in here. Little auxiliary instruments, little flourishes that I don't know, they sort of give this album a lot of character, and it has sort of a jokey vibe, which I enjoy. And I don't know, I feel like it kind of works here because this whole album doesn't really take itself too seriously at all. Little jokey like gaps in Louisiana Purchase with like the jazz keyboards, and I don't know, Exist Warp Breaks is so fun. I put that song on all the time. And then that little like that Olivia Wilde intro where he's just like doing an orgasm noise between each section. I don't know, it's great, and it's, I don't know, it's done well. Like there's a lot of jokes, but like they're like executed really well in my opinion, and like it's like joke virtuosos in a way. How do you feel about this one? I thought you would hate it, but I don't know.
I didn't hate it. I did not hate it. Like I said to you, I was like, this is the most like crusty album I've ever heard, because like it sounds like if I imagine kind of like your perfect album, this is kind of close to that. And I liked it. I mean, I picked up on a lot of what you did too, like the kind of jokiness, and virtuosity of some of the songs. Sometimes Why was awesome. That was a really fun
That's a good
song.
track, yeah. With with the guy with Say Anything.
Yeah, I liked that song, and I liked Louisiana Purchase too. To me, again, this is an album that is very similar to that Sadder record. I mean, I think it's which one do I prefer? It's actually a bit of a tough question. I guess I think this one's slightly better. Maybe it's a little bit like kind of I don't know.
It's a bit more varied
ambitious.
than the Seder one, I think, but
Yeah, I think it's kind of the same approach done with a little bit more depth, maybe, and like not in terms of like cerebral lyrics or anything, but depth in terms of like here's like a bigger sonic kind of canvas that we are using for these songs. And I think it's fun. I think, like you said, it's a fun record. This is not an album that I would ever listen to front to back. It's not for me.
Fair
that it's like too busy. I would rather this is the kind of record we'll put one song into a mixed playlist here and there for some variety or for something fun. But I don't think it's a bad album at all, and the opener was good too. Now that I'm refreshing my brain here, I like the opening track as well. So I mean that's basically my thoughts on it.
yeah, fair enough. It's just over time whenever I'm listening to music, I'm like, oh, like I really want to listen to Pulses right now. I just kept going back to it. I played Exist Warp Break so many times. Who else? The features are like really good on this across the board. Like Max Bemis was good, and I don't know what's her name, Sierra Binondo. She was on Mount Midoriyama. That's from some JRPG I played, but I don't remember the name. I just remember the name of the mountain. She sounds really good, and she's in a band called With Sails Ahead I also listen to. So I don't know, she fit into that song perfectly. And yeah, and then Joey Lancaster has that really like kind of subtle soft spoken part in Big Mood, which is a great song. What else? And I don't know, there's a lot of really cool guitar flourishes and like technicality and stuff, but I felt it wasn't pushed to the forefront. It was sort of done in service of the songs, which I liked a lot about this album.
Big Mood was a good song too. I liked that one. Yeah. I think that's all true. I mean, I think this is a pretty niche record. Like, I think this is kind of like going to appeal to a small but dedicated audience. It's kind of a cult record to me.
Yeah.
In the same way that like the Sadder record is. Not really like the Protest album. I'm trying to think of other bands. I mean, well, like your Dance Gavin Dance crowd, right? That's basically who this is going to appeal to, which I don't think is a bad thing, but maybe just kind of worth pointing out. I think it's for a very specific subsection of an audience who are really going to love this. And for me, I liked it, and it's again, and I will put a song or two in a playlist. I can't say I'm going to return to it frequently, but I could see me being in the mood for something like this every now and again. So
yeah, fair enough.
Didn't hate it. Better than Dance Gavin Dance.
You know what's funny about this? You know what? Yeah, it was better than Dance Gavin Dance this year. Those boys disappointed me for the first time this year.
Oh God.
Well, that's for another podcast. But it's funny that all of these bands, like I think Pulses, Seder, like DGD, like they're almost exclusively from California. It's weird that like a state can influence a sound so much. Like 9 out of 10 of them are from the state of California, which that's always intrigued me. It's an interesting point.
Yeah, there is regionality to music. Like, there are trends that geographically occur, and yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon. I don't really know why this specific sound came out of California. Maybe one was, if DGD was the like progenitors, then maybe their contemporaries just kind of latched on. But yeah, it's interesting. That's like worthy of an essay.
Yeah, that's true.
The specific California post-hardcore sound.
I'll help you write it.
Oh God, I want to write too much to do.
Yeah, I understand. So we got to your album of the year, yeah?
Yeah, my number one. So I'll preface my number one by saying that I don't think that in a normal year this would have been my number one. The reason that it's my number one is because this was COVID. This was the year that I still feel like I'm in limbo. I feel like I've been in limbo since March 14th.
I agree.
This whole year has just been like a gaping hole in my life or something. Which isn't to say it's been terrible. Like there's been good stuff that's happened, but it's just like
started the
such a
podcast.
surreal. Yeah, exactly. Like this podcast. It's been such a surreal year, and I actually can't believe it's already December now that I'm thinking back over the whole course of it. But so this album is one that is relaxing. It is an ambient record. It is a drone record. Space ambient. It is called Stasis Sounds for Long Distance Space Travel. It is by 36 and Japanese artists who in English is, I believe, called Zeke. And this is an hour and a half long. Yes, 3 parts, an hour and a half, 3-part long ambient record that is very serene. It is really nice. I've played it many a time. It is great for reducing your stress. It is great for reducing your existential crises that may occur as a result of COVID. I just think it's really like it sets out a very specific agenda, and I think it pretty well nails it.
Yeah.
And it's really transportive. Like it really. It puts you right in that space capsule, like to me. I especially like the first part. I think stages 2 and 3. Well, in fact, just all of them. Stages 1 to 4, especially stage 3. Though I love that song, and I wish it was way longer. It's only 5 minutes, and it should be like 4 times that long.
Sorry, which one's this?
It's the third track, stage 3,
okay.
which is the shortest song of the first 4, which is part 1, and it's the best one. I just wish it was way longer. I love that one, and I think this is, for me, this is the right album to name my number one in this specific year. And any other year, I think Paysage d'Hiver would have been my number one, but this specific year, this just feels right to me. So what did you think of this album?
I thought it was great. This was something, when I picked it up, I sort of looked at the length, I looked at the genres. I thought I was going to have a way worse time going into it. But no, it's very lush and beautiful sounding throughout its entire runtime. And it just gives you the feel of being in a stasis pod. And just traveling through the universe. It reminded me a lot of the video game No Man's Sky, namely the soundtrack that 65 Days of Static did in 2016. That album was not as much of like a drone ambient album. That was more sort of like an ambient post-rock kind of thing. But I felt like that held a lot of similarities just in terms of like pure vibe. This is something I listened to like the 3 parts separately. And for me at least, I found that was the best way to listen to it, because it is a very long piece of music. But I think each sort of ensuite of tracks does differentiate itself nicely enough. Maybe the tracks like in each segment can kind of blend together a bit for better or for worse. No, but it's something I thought was great. It's really well produced. It sounds excellent. Whoever is sort of making these wall of sound synths, whether it is the man 36 or the man Zeke, or maybe they're women. I don't know anything about them. But
I don't either.
No, they did a really good job with this. I enjoyed it. It's something I would put on in sort of unique circumstances, maybe a long drive, or if I'm trying to go to sleep, or I don't know. This might be something good to read to. I haven't tried that one yet, but I thought it was really good. It's not something I would put in my top 10, just sort of because of the niche times that I would listen to it, which I don't even know if that's a complaint or not, but I did think it was great.
Yeah, and I'll point out one other thing which is interesting about it is that the second part of the album, and this is kind of genius, is uses field recordings, so it kind of bridges the first and third parts of the record. And to me, it's almost like that in that second part of the record, it's like you're in some stasis chamber or whatever, right? And it's like during your sleep, they're like playing videos, so you're imagining you're back on Earth or something.
Oh,
so
really?
It's using like actual real field recordings to kind of simulate that idea, versus you have like the initial travel and then the cool down period as the third part. So I just think that's really smart the way they structured this, and ultimately, again, it was just very very prescient given the COVID situation, but to me it's a kind of an outside the box number one maybe, but I think you know something about outside the box number ones, given what I know was about to happen. What's your number one?
We're actually going to talk about the number one for as long as it's runtime. I didn't tell you about this before.
We'll see you on Christmas.
Yeah. So this I didn't want to put in my top 10 list, but after listening to it, I just knew I had to, because it's not really like a fair top 10 album. It is the Final Fantasy VII Remake OST, which is 7 CDs, 7 albums of greatness. I don't know, it's these guys, Nobuo Uematsu, Masashi Hamamzu, I just butchered his last name. They have been doing these soundtracks for the games for years. They have an amazing ear for music. You get all the classics here from the original Final Fantasy VII, the Bombing Mission, A Tower of Promise, One Winged Angel. I don't know, these very dense orchestral arrangements, and they sound amazing. Also, a really big variety of different kind of genres. You get some jazz, you get some funk, a lot of instrumental, but you get a bit of vocals. Disc 4 has a lot of sort of techno and electronica, because I think they had a different guy wrote Disc 4. Some metal, and some sort of like cinematic soundtracky kind of stuff. I could talk about this whole thing for hours. I wasn't really ready for this, because it's like, what do I even talk about? But there's, I don't know, some of my favorite songs on this are the remake of the Bombing Mission. The Airbuster is just nuts. A One Winged Angel on the last disc is like a...
It's great. It's a great song.
Go.
Oh, sorry. Right. Okay. So you were saying this is from one game. This is from.
Yeah.
Okay. Because. I mean, I certainly like this, and I feel as though I don't have a complete picture almost.
Yeah. Fair enough.
And so I can talk about it as music, and sure, that's great. But I just. For one, I haven't heard it all, and for another, I've never played the games. And I will say, the music is good enough. It makes me want to play the game. I felt that same way about the Doom soundtrack, which I never played that game, and I heard the soundtrack, and I wanted to go play it. So it's successful on that level.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. We both picked very kind of outside the box number ones, and. Yeah, I mean, I'm not
this
sure
is something. This is something I played, kind of due to being stuck in quarantine. I maybe wouldn't have had the time to go through this if, sort of life was normal. At least not as fast, right?
Yeah. So I think both of these number ones are respective of the year they were listened to in, respective of this 2020 specifically. Which is interesting. Like I don't think this would have been your number one in a normal year.
I agree.
Said as much, basically. and likewise with mine. So on a bigger level, this is an interesting choice for me because of what it represents, I guess.
Yeah.
Which, yeah. So I mean, I applaud this as a number one. I think it's so let me make sure I get what it is though. This is a remake of a game that came out before.
Yeah, so Final Fantasy VII came out on the PS1, like, I want to say the late 90s. So that's considered like an all-time great game, like one of the best on the system. So everyone was just begging for a remake on the PS4, and eventually, I think as of 2020, we got it. Yeah, so all the songs, like there's some new ones, but like songs like One Winged Angel and The Bombing Mission, they're from the old game, where it was just like kind of way more chintzy sounding like MIDI tracks because of the PS1's processing power. They're fully reimagined, like in an orchestral sense or in any other way, because there's so many different genres on this going on.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So, yeah, a little bit of a cop out. It's a remake. But okay, all right, we'll allow it. Yeah. I think overall both good lists. Like there was a little bit of overlap, whereas last year we only did 5 records, but there wasn't any overlap. So there was some this year, and I think we got to do more regular podcasts again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We should. All right. Well, I'm going to say bye to the listeners. Thank you for listening this far. Listen to us ramble on for 2 hours. Bye.